semblance of this. Prabhupada gave a bit more appreciation to the Catholic approach because it was more personal, more literal, more accepting, and then the other path, kind of removing the personality, removing some of the literalness. It became more vague and... Okay, continue please.
The Lord has explained, also in the 39th verse, that by working by the principles of Buddha Yoga, or Krishna consciousness, one can be relieved from the bonds of action. And, furthermore, there is no flaw in the process. The same principle is more clearly explained in the 61st verse, that this Buddha Yoga is to depend entirely on the Supreme, or more specifically on Krishna. And in this way, all the senses can be brought under control very easily. Therefore, both the yogas are interdependent, as religion and philosophy. Religion without philosophy is sentiment, or sometimes fanaticism, while philosophy without religion is mental speculation.
Yes, this is... like you have the scientific approach is analytical, and they claim complete ownership. They claim complete ownership of the term scientific, and they chastise, criticize the religionists as just being fanatics. They're religious fanatics, no basis, no science, no proof, just you believe in something, even though you've never seen it, never experienced it, there's no evidence of it, they criticize. And then the religionists, they criticize the scientists and the philosophers. They have no faith, you're faithless. And that's true, they are faithless. And it's true that the others are fanatics, because you can ask them, why does an animal have no soul? What is the difference between an animal and a human being? And they can't give good answers, and there's many things they can't understand because they don't have philosophy. They're not analytical enough. They just, for example, they can accept the idea that their Savior died for their sins, but they don't think there's anything wrong with going on sinning, and He goes on having to suffer for their... Even though He told them to stop sinning, they kind of go beyond that and say, I'm sure that He's more merciful than I can be sinful. So that type of philosophy, there's no philosophy there, but there's no faith in the scientists, so neither one of them can achieve the perfection. But Bhakti Vedanta, Bhakti is the devotional side, you could say, and the Vedanta is the philosophical side. When they come together, then you have the pure, the ultimate end of all knowledge, which is surrender to Krishna. The specific, that absolute truth is defined as a person. Vadanti tat tattva vidas tattvam yajkanam advayam prameti paramatmeti bhagavaniti shabdate. The absolute truth is realized in three features: Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Through the jnana process, you can realize the absolute truth as Brahman. Through the yoga process, the Ashtanga system, you can realize the absolute truth as Super Soul, Paramatma. And through the Bhakti process, or Karma Yoga process, you can realize the absolute truth is Bhagavan, Krishna. And when you realize Bhagavan Krishna, that includes the Paramatma feature, because Krishna says, I am situated. Ishvara sarva bhutanam hridesha junatishtati brahmayan sarva bhutanam yantra rudhani maya. I'm situated in everyone's heart. and I'm directing the wanderings of all living entities who are seated as on a machine made of material energy. He's in the heart. Krishna says, that's me. Then he says, Brahmano hi patishtaham amritasya vayasya cha. I'm the source, I'm the basis of the impersonal Brahman. So it's clear, Bhagavan is in the heart, Bhagavan is the source of the Brahman. Krishna explains it all in Bhagavad Gita, therefore Gita Upanishad, it is the essence of all the Upanishads, which is the commentary or the further elaboration on the four Vedas. And so just by reading Bhagavad Gita, we get all the Vedic knowledge. We don't. That's why Prabhupada worked so hard to give us Bhagavad Gita as it is, and even the first 1,000-page copy, translation and commentary that he made of Bhagavad Gita got stolen. He did it all again. Some of us might have gotten a little disappointed. Well, I did a 1,000-page book. Now it's gone. I did my work. But he did it, he wrote it all again. So, how important it is. Most important book. Spoken by the Supreme Lord. All the questions are answered to life. All life's questions are answered in Bhagavad Gita. And this is a very nice point that, summarizing, there are two types of persons who are trying to understand the spirit and understand the absolute truth. The yogis, they also want to understand the absolute truth through a mystical process, by meditation. Someone was asking what's the difference between the yogis and is it bhakti? There's some bhakti there in the Ashtanga yoga process. Turn this off. There's some bhakti. Just off, yeah. Thank you. Off, yeah. There's also some bhakti in the jnana process, but not as much. And there's not as much bhakti in the Ashtanga yoga process. They're in appreciation, more in the five different rasas, Shanta rasa, appreciation on some level, but then the bhakti begins with the dasya ras, where there's service and then higher levels. So a bhakta, so it's by approaching the absolute truth through devotional service, one has faith, but it's not that his faith has no knowledge. Along with the faith, he's reading Bhagavad Gita, just like we don't only chant Hare Krishna. We don't just have kirtans or artis in our temples. If we do that, Prabhupada warned that if we just have deity worship and kirtan and no explanation of the philosophy, then after some time it'll just be ringing bells. We've seen that. Some temples you go, you just hear bells. And then it loses the attraction. There has to be both. Panchatriki Vidhi and Bhagavad Vidhi, two parallel lines of the railroad track. But we have both. We have deity worship, we have kirtan, and we have philosophy. As far as we can understand, at least by hearing, at least by sitting and giving oral reception, even if it's a little difficult for us to fathom all of it, let the sound vibration come, hear, try to understand as far as possible. And the best way to understand it is to try to explain it to someone else. In other words, what you've heard, go tell someone else. Explain it to them. Doesn't matter who. So just find somebody, anyone who will listen. Say, do you mind if I explain? I want to explain something to you. I just learned it. Say, yes, what is it? All right. So I just learned that the soul is not the body. Do you understand what I mean? No. Okay, well let me explain. There's the body is like a car. You understand? Yes. And inside the car there's a driver. You get the point. In other words, we explain it, then our understanding becomes enhanced. Then we have to explain it. That's why preaching is so important. Everybody should preach, because then you can preach what you know. Otherwise, a Brahmin who doesn't preach, he'll lose his learning. It seeps out. But if he preaches, then he doesn't lose it. It enhances, he gets more. As he preaches, his understanding gets greater. Continue.
The ultimate goal is Krishna, because the philosophers who are also sincerely searching after the absolute truth. Hold on a second. The ultimate goal is Krishna because the philosophers who are also sincerely searching after the absolute truth come in the end to Krishna consciousness. This is also stated in the Bhagavad Gita. The whole process is to understand the real position of the self in relation to the superself. The indirect process is philosophical speculation by which gradually one may come to the point of Krishna consciousness. And the other process is directly connecting with everything in Krishna consciousness.
Connecting everything with.
I'm sorry. Connecting. Okay, it's different in this book. Of these two, the path of Krishna consciousness is better because it does not depend on purifying the senses by a philosophical process. Krishna consciousness is itself the purifying process, and by the direct method of devotional service, it is simultaneously easy and sublime.
Yes. We become, by the practices of Bhakti Yoga. What are the practices of Bhakti Yoga? Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, Vishnu Parasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmanivedanam. These are 9 processes of devotional service. Shravanam, hearing about Krishna. Not hearing about other things in the material, that is not Shravanam. But hearing about Krishna. And hearing about Krishna not just from anyone. Avaishnava Makodgirnam, Putam Harikatamritam, Shravanam Naiva Kartavyam, Sarpo Chishtaham Yatapayaha. Not hearing about Krishna from non-devotees at all. Anything. Whatever they say about Krishna, a Vaishnava who wants to make spiritual progress should avoid it like the plague. Because why? Milk touched by the lips of a serpent causes poisonous effects. What can they speak about Krishna that's worth hearing? Unless they're devotees. And if they're not devotees, then why are they speaking about Krishna? To mislead. To try to poison everyone else into not believing in Krishna. But we don't want to hear that. We don't want to take that medicine. That's not medicine. It may seem, it's like they may have Ramayana, of such and such person, and Ramayan of this person and this person, Krishna Katha. But no, unless they're pure bhaktas, pure devotees, that Shravanam will not help. But hearing from pure devotees. Pure devotee, Prabhupada once defined, a pure devotee is one who's preparing to go back to Godhead. That's his goal. His goal is to go back to Godhead. He doesn't want to serve Krishna for something else, like, well, I'm serving Bhagavan and then I'll get the benediction to go to heaven. Or I'm serving Bhagavan and then I'll merge and become Bhagavan. That's not Anya Bilashita Shunyam Jnana Karma Dhyanavitam Anukulyena Krishnanu Shilanam Bhakti-Uttama. Pure devotional service means without any desire for anything material, sense gratification, or merging into the Brahman, becoming one. That idea of becoming one with God is objectionable to the Vaishnavas. So, the bhakti process includes the benefits of the others. What are the benefits of the others? Eternality, the merging into the Brahman gives one eternality in a sense, because at least while they're in the Brahman, they're not subject to birth and death. No more change of body. No more body. So but a bhakti gets that too. Because Chaktva Punarjanmanaiti Mameti Sarjana. When he gives up this body, he never takes birth again. But his position is more secure because he is fixed at the lotus feet of Krishna, and Swarupena Vivastiti. Hitva Anyuta Rupam Swarupena Vivastiti. His position now, he's in his Swarup. That's his natural constitutional position, form, personality, engagement, relationship. That's natural. The impersonal process is unnatural. How long can you tell a child not to do anything? If the child is mischievous, say, don't stop that. For a few seconds he's stunned, but then very soon afterwards he'll begin again. And it'll be mischievous unless you teach him the right thing to do. So why not start off with the right thing to do from the beginning? From Bhakti Yoga, from day one can control the senses. One doesn't have to artificially try to stop them, engage them. It's like a child, it's easy. If a child is playing with matches, an intelligent guardian will give something better that's more attractive than the matches. The child loses interest in the matches, takes the thing that's not harmful to them. Give up the harmful, take the harmless. That's more enjoyable. So the senses are like snakes, serpents, with poison fangs. But Bhakti Yoga takes out the poison fangs of the senses. Because what is the poison? The poison is sense gratification, Vishaya. Vishaya venivartante nirahara siddhehinam rasavarjam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate. Param drishtva nivartate. Gets a higher taste. The higher taste removes the fangs with the poison in them. I was thinking about that today, that we see some advanced devotees, they're able to move in the world, even mixing with very wealthy people, or very beautiful people, or very influential people, or even impersonalists, and yet they don't become contaminated because they've learned how to get the higher taste through devotional service. Therefore they're not in danger. The senses will not destroy them, will not poison them, because they've taken the poison fangs out. This is what we're supposed to be learning from our spiritual master. How to see devotional service in everything. How to engage the senses. Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhakti Ruchite. How to engage the senses in the service of the master of the senses. Senses are not bad. They're bad when our consciousness is bad. Then they're terrible. It's like a person whose consciousness is impure. All he's thinking about is the tongue should be eating nonsense, the mind should be thinking about nonsense, every different sense of the body should be doing nonsense, because his heart is full of impure things. Therefore, the chanting of Hare Krishna is essential. It purifies the heart. With that purified consciousness, chitti. Chitti means heart, it means consciousness, same idea. When the consciousness becomes purified, then the senses will be nicely engaged. Ambarish Maharaj engaged his arms in cleaning the temple, engaged his legs in walking to the temple, his tongue in tasting prasadam offered to the deity, his nose in smelling the incense offered to the deity, his eyes in seeing the beautiful form of the Lord. We have to train up our senses, train the mind. Savaimana Krishna Padara Vindaya. Engage the mind. Mantra. The mind is delivered by the mantra, the Maha Mantra. That's why we have to chant at least 16 rounds a day, because that's the arrangement that our Acharya has made on our behalf. That was the negotiation. We know the story. The devotees were even involved in the negotiation. Started off at 64 rounds, then went to 32, then 16. Prabhupada consulted. Okay, 16 has been accepted, now don't go lower than that. So we have to do that. Otherwise we can't expect to get the full accomplishment of love of Krishna. But otherwise we can, because the founder Acharya has made that as power of attorney. He has the right to negotiate on behalf of both parties, on behalf of Krishna and on behalf of the students, the candidates to become Krishna conscious. Consciousness becomes purified through bhakti, shravanam, kirtanam, smaranam, remembering, memorizing. Yes, remembering what we've heard, and by chanting, then smaranam comes very nicely, because you have to remember so many things I've heard. Shravanam, kirtanam, smaranam, Vishnu padasevanam. Holy places is in that category, Vishnu padasevanam. These are the holy places, the lotus feet of the Lord. Archanam, deity worship. It's so important. Imagine if the Lord didn't rise early for Mangal Arati, how difficult it would be for us to get up early. We would think, well, why should I get up? I can chant anytime. But because the Lord has very kindly agreed. Recently we were discussing about whether grihastas or others should also get up early in the morning. In the Krishna book, we hear that Krishna got up early in the morning and meditated on Radha Krishna. Prabhupada said that's the ideal for householders, to follow the example of Krishna and Rukmini. Even though the queens, they cursed the cock, the rooster, for making that sound. Because that sound is part of the divine arrangement. That he begins his crowing very early before the sunrise, and that's indication that it's time to rise now. So Krishna would get up, even though he was being embraced by his wives, and then he would perform his duties. So yes, everyone can rise early and make spiritual progress like Krishna. Our process is easier. The other process is so difficult. We see people who are trying to become renounced without having knowledge of God's form, His activities, without knowing what He looks like. Very difficult to give up the attraction for the senses that we have since time immemorial. But the beauty is that when we see Krishna, or when we hear Krishna's name, or hear the philosophy, or engage even in service, any aspect, any connection with Krishna, then giving up the Maya is not difficult. As long as we stay connected, be fully engaged. That's the art, how to keep engaged all the time. So vyarta kalatvam. And Prabhupada has given us the perfect process from, as he said, from 4 in the morning till 10 at night, full engagement. If we keep engaged like that, that's why we stay with devotees. It's so important to live with devotee, in the association of devotees, because then we can always be engaged. Someone will always be saying, Prabhu, are you engaged? Doesn't look like you're engaged. Looks like you're sleeping. Here's some nice, well, you make this garland for Krishna. Can you make this offering for Krishna? That's what you get when you associate with devotees. You get service. Prabhu, we're going on Harinam now. You should come with us. All right. Oh. We need all these things. These are very valuable because they keep us engaged, and then Maya can't act on us. Only Maya engages. The idle mind is the devil's workshop. The idle mind. When we don't have anything, no Krishna on the mind, no Krishna service to do, then devil's workshop. Why don't you check what's going on in the world? See how the real world is doing. So many things. The tongue. It's a process, and we become, as we practice it, then we start becoming attached to the purity. It's like keeping clean. Once one has a taste for cleanliness, then he doesn't want to go back to being unclean. He can't stand it anymore. He doesn't like ignorance. But when one's in ignorance, he doesn't like goodness. By associating with Krishna, who's all good, the supreme good, Shuddha Sattva, then our tastes keep going up. And we start getting less and less attracted to the ignorance, to the passion, to all these things. And then the mind becomes our friend. For one who's reached the Super Soul, the mind is the best of friends. Super Soul is Krishna. We can reach Krishna by chanting, by worshipping, by serving, so many ways. So, any questions on these points?